The great chamber of Nexus Prime had never been so loud. Voices echoed off the crystal walls as representatives from across the galaxy shouted over each other. Ambassador Thelnora stood at her podium, her scaled hands gripping the edges as she watched the chaos unfold before her. The holographic display at the center of the room showed the same terrible image it had shown for weeks now. Red markers spread across the outer rim territories like a disease. Each marker represented a colony that had gone silent. Each one meant millions of lives simply erased from existence. The Devourers had come from the darkness between stars, and nothing could stop them. "We must negotiate," shouted Counselor Vresh, his crystalline body pulsing with agitated light. "Every species can be reasoned with. We simply have not found the right approach." Thelnora wanted to laugh, but her people had forgotten how generations ago. The Valorians had been peaceful for so long that even their language had lost words for certain kinds of violence. They negotiated. They mediated. They built consensus. It had worked for 1,000 years. But the Devourers did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply consumed. "Another colony just went dark," announced the station's AI, its voice cutting through the argument. "Helios Major, population 8 million. All signals ceased 4 minutes ago." The chamber fell silent. 8 million lives gone in the time it took to have an argument. Thelnora looked around at her fellow counselors. She saw fear in every face, regardless of how alien those faces might be. The Krell collective mind trembled in its containment field. The ethereals dimmed their light. Even the proud Arcturus delegation had stopped their posturing. They were losing this war, and they had never even learned how to fight one. "There is one option we have not discussed," Thelnora said quietly. The chamber's acoustics carried her voice to every corner. "One option we have all been avoiding." "Do not say it," Vresh warned, his light flickering red. "The path leads only to darkness." "Darker than extinction?" Thelnora asked. She brought up a new image on the holographic display. It showed a blue planet third from its star covered in water and green landmasses. Earth, the human homeworld. The reaction was immediate. Half the council began speaking at once, their voices mixing into an incomprehensible noise of objection and fear. "They are savages," someone shouted. "We expelled them for a reason." Another voice called out. "They refuse to evolve beyond violence." Thelnora waited for the noise to die down. She had expected this reaction. 200 years ago, humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Council. They had come eagerly, hopeful, and excited to join the community of advanced species. But the Council had made demands. Humanity must dismantle their weapons. They must dissolve their armies. They must embrace the path of peace that all civilized species walked. Humanity had refused. The Council had been shocked. What species would choose to keep weapons of war when offered enlightenment? What kind of people would cling to violence when peace was possible? The answer had been clear to everyone. Primitives. Dangerous, backwards primitives who did not deserve a place among the stars. So humanity had been rejected. They had withdrawn to their solar system and closed their borders. For 2 centuries they had been silent. The galaxy had moved on, confident in its superiority. But Thelnora had studied the old records. She had watched the videos from humanity's presentation to the Council. She remembered the face of their representative, a woman named Admiral Chen, as she had addressed the Council's demands. "You mistake our weapons for primitiveness," Chen had said. "You mistake our preparedness for aggression. We keep our military because we understand something you have forgotten. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. Peace is the choice not to use it. And that choice only matters if you could choose otherwise." The Council had laughed at her then. They had dismissed her words as the philosophy of a violent species trying to justify its own nature. Nobody was laughing now. "What would you have us do?" Counselor Vresh asked, his tone bitter. "Invite them back? Beg the warmongers for help? Admit that we were wrong?" "Yes," Thelnora said simply. "All of that. Because the alternative is watching our civilizations die while we debate philosophy." The vote took 3 hours. It passed by the narrowest margin in Council history. Many representatives abstained, unable to vote yes but unwilling to condemn their people by voting no. Thelnora was given the task of composing the message. She worked on it for days, carefully choosing each word. The message needed to be diplomatic. It needed to preserve the Council's dignity. It needed to not sound like begging, even though that was exactly what it was. The final message was a masterwork of political language. It spoke of mutual cooperation and cultural exchange. It mentioned strategic consultation and sharing of expertise. It invited humanity to send a small delegation to discuss the current situation. Nowhere did it use the word help. Nowhere did it mention weapons or war or military force. The Council's pride would not allow such directness. The message was sent on a priority channel, carried by quantum transmission across the light years to Earth. The reply came back in less than a day. Thelnora opened it in her private chambers, afraid to read it in front of the Council. The message was short. Only 4 words: request received. Humanity coming. Something about those words made Thelnora's scales prickle with an emotion she did not understand. It was not quite fear. It was not quite hope. It was something older, something her species had forgotten in their centuries of peace. It was the feeling prey animals got when they heard something large moving through the darkness. The question was whether that thing in the darkness was coming to save them or devour them. Thelnora suspected humanity did not see much difference between the two. The ceremonial dock at Nexus Prime had been prepared with great care. Banners from every council species hung from the walls. The greeting committee stood in perfect formation, their ceremonial robes pressed and their speeches prepared. Music played softly through the station's speakers, a gentle melody composed specifically for this historic occasion. Ambassador Thelnora stood at the front of the delegation, trying to calm her nervous hearts. She had imagined this moment 100 times. A small human shuttle would arrive. Perhaps a dozen diplomats would emerge, dressed in formal attire. There would be speeches, refreshments, a tour of the facilities. Then they would get to work on strategy, consulting on how to handle the devourer crisis. The station's sensors pinged. The humans were arriving. Single contact detected, the AI announced. Correction. Multiple contacts, correction. Mass slip space emergence in progress. Thelnora felt her blood go cold. Mass emergence? That was not a diplomatic shuttle. The view screen on the wall activated automatically, showing the space outside the station. Thelnora's legs nearly gave out at what she saw. Ships. Dozens of ships. No, more than that. The tactical display counted 47 distinct vessels, and they were still appearing from slip space. They were not shuttles or transports. They were warships. Actual military vessels bristling with weapons that had not been seen in council space for generations. At the center of the formation was something that defied description. It was massive, larger than most stations Thelnora had ever seen. The hull was dark gray, covered in armor plating and weapon emplacements. The name was visible even from a distance, painted in letters 10 meters tall. UES Indomitable. That is a dreadnought, someone whispered behind her. They brought a dreadnought. The greeting committee fell apart. Representatives scattered, some running for communication consoles, others simply fleeing in panic. The music continued playing, a ridiculous contrast to the military fleet filling the view screen. Thelnora stood frozen, unable to look away from the display. She had asked for advisors. She had asked for a few military consultants. She had not asked for this. The communication console chimed. Someone was hailing the station. With shaking hands, Thelnora accepted the call. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She was human, perhaps 50 years old by their standards, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything they looked at. She wore a military uniform, dark blue with gold trim, and more medals than Thelnora could count. Nexus Prime, this is Admiral Victoria Chen of the United Earth Space Command, requesting permission to dock and deploy personnel. It was the same woman. The same Admiral Chen who had addressed the Council 200 years ago. Humanity had sent the woman they had rejected to answer their call for help. Deploy personnel, Thelnora managed to say. Admiral, we requested a small delegation. You received one, Chen replied, and there was something in her voice that might have been amusement. 3 diplomats. They are very small. The rest is their support staff. Support staff? Admiral, you brought an entire fleet. Yes, Chen's expression did not change. You have a crisis. We brought a solution. Do we have permission to dock? Thelnora looked around at the chaos in the docking bay. Representatives were shouting into communication devices. Security personnel stood in confused groups, unsure what to do. The carefully planned reception had become a disaster, but outside the devourers continued their advance. Another colony would go dark soon, then another. Then another. Permission granted, Thelnora said quietly. The docking process took 6 hours. The Indomitable was too large for the station's regular docks. Instead, it positioned itself alongside Nexus Prime and extended boarding tubes. Smaller vessels landed in the cargo bays, disgorging equipment and personnel in an endless stream. Thelnora watched from the observation deck as humans swarmed through the station. They moved with purpose, carrying equipment, setting up workstations, and transforming empty cargo bays into command centers. They did not ask permission. They simply acted, as if the station belonged to them. She made her way to Docking Bay 7, where Admiral Chen was supposed to arrive. The bay was full of activity. Human soldiers in powered armor stood guard at the entrance. Technicians worked on installing some kind of communications array. A young human woman was arguing with a Krell worker about power distribution. Then Admiral Chen walked through the airlock, and everyone in the bay suddenly stood straighter. The Admiral was shorter than Thelnora had expected. Most humans were small compared to Valorians, but there was something about the way Chen carried herself that made her seem larger than she was. She walked like someone who had never doubted herself in her life. "Ambassador Thelnora," Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "It has been a long time." Thelnora touched the Admiral's hand, trying to remember the proper way to do it. Human customs were strange. "Admiral Chen, I must admit we were expecting something smaller. You asked for help." Chen's eyes were hard. "This is what human help looks like." "Should we leave?" "No!" The word came out more desperate than Thelnora intended. "No, we need you. But the Council is concerned. This looks like an invasion force." "It is a response force," Chen corrected, "scaled appropriately to the threat you described. You are being attacked by an enemy that has destroyed dozens of colonies. Did you think we would send a strongly worded letter?" Thelnora did not know how to answer that. The truth was, she had not really thought about what humanity would send. She had just hoped they would help somehow. "I need to see your tactical data," Chen continued, already walking toward the exit. "Every sensor reading you have on the Devourers. Fleet positions, attack patterns, colony locations, everything. My people are setting up a command center on Deck 42. I expect full access to your networks within the hour." "Admiral, I do not have the authority to grant that." Chen stopped walking and turned to face her. "Then get someone who does." "Ambassador, you called us. We came. Now either let us work or we leave and you can handle this crisis the way you have been handling it. How has that been working out for you?" The words stung because they were true. The Council had been handling the crisis by watching colonies die and arguing about what to do. "I will speak to the Council," Thelnora said. "Good." Chen nodded and started walking again. "And Ambassador? Tell them something for me. Tell them we did not come here to follow their rules. We came here to win. If they cannot accept that, this is going to be a very short visit." Thelnora watched the Admiral disappear down the corridor, followed by a squad of armed soldiers. Around her, humans continued their work, transforming the peaceful station into something it had never been before. A war base. And deep down, in a part of herself that civilization had tried to erase, Thelnora felt something she had not felt in years: hope. The Council had gathered in emergency session for the 3rd time that day. Thelnora was exhausted, but Admiral Chen showed no signs of fatigue as she stood before the assembled representatives. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed the human battle plan in detail. "You want to use nuclear weapons," Councillor Vresh said, his crystalline form pulsing with distress. "In space, near populated systems." "I want to use every weapon available," Chen replied calmly. "Nuclear devices are clean in vacuum. No fallout. Minimal collateral damage if deployed correctly. The Council banned them because they frightened you, not because they are actually dangerous in space combat. They are weapons of mass destruction." "They are tools," Chen said. "And right now you need tools that can destroy things on a massive scale. That is what the Devourers are. Massive." Thelnora watched the other councillors shift uncomfortably. The debate had been going on for hours. Admiral Chen had presented a strategy that was aggressive, risky, and completely unlike anything the Council had ever considered. The plan involved using an inhabited colony as bait, luring the Devourers into a trap, and then attacking them with overwhelming force. "The acceptable casualties you have listed," another councillor spoke up. A Terrene whose name Thelnora could never remember. "You estimate 3,000 human deaths if everything goes perfectly. Does that not concern you? Of course it concerns me, Chen said. And for the first time, Thelnora heard emotion in the Admiral's voice. Every name on that list concerns me. I will know their families. I will write letters to their children. But if we do nothing, how many will die? How many have already died while we stand here debating? There must be another way, Vresh insisted. A way that does not require so much death. Show me. Chen's voice was hard again. Show me your peaceful solution. Show me how you negotiate with an enemy that does not communicate. Show me how you reason with machines that only understand consumption. I am here because you could not find another way. I am here because every other way has failed. The chamber fell silent. It was a brutal truth, but it was truth nonetheless. Even if we accept your plan, Thelnora said carefully, the Council must approve it. These decisions cannot be made by one species alone. How long will that take? Chen asked. 3 days, perhaps 4. We must consult with... You do not have 3 days. Chen pointed at the display. The Devourers will reach Helios Minor in 36 hours. They will harvest it in 48. By the time your debate is finished, another 8 million people will be dead. So here is what will happen instead. You will approve my plan now, or I will execute it without your approval. The chamber erupted in outrage. Representatives stood shouting about sovereignty and procedures and the rule of law. Admiral Chen waited for the noise to die down, her face showing no reaction to the anger directed at her. You asked for help, she said quietly. But somehow her voice carried over the chaos. This is what human help looks like. We do not wait for perfect solutions. We do not debate while people die, we act. If that frightens you, if that disgusts you, then send us home. But do it now because I have work to do. Thelnora looked around at her fellow counselors. She saw fear in their faces. Fear of the Devourers, fear of humanity, fear of making the wrong choice. But underneath that fear, she saw something else, desperation. I call for a vote, she said. The vote was closer than Thelnora expected, but it passed. Admiral Chen was granted operational authority for the defense of Helios Minor. As the session ended and counselors filed out, many of them would not meet Thelnora's eyes. Down on the lower decks, the human Marines were training. Thelnora had gone to observe, curious about how humans prepared for battle. What she found shocked her more than the fleet's arrival. The humans were using live ammunition. In the station. Actual bullets and explosives in a training exercise. Station security had tried to stop them, but the Marines had simply shown their authorization from Admiral Chen and continued. Thelnora watched through a viewing window as humans in full combat armor moved through a hastily constructed course. They moved fast, faster than she thought possible in that heavy equipment. Targets popped up and were destroyed in seconds. Explosions echoed through the deck, and through it all the humans were shouting to each other, coordinating their movements with a precision that seemed almost telepathic. Intense, is it not? A voice said beside her. Thelnora turned to find a human standing next to her. He was younger than Admiral Chen, perhaps 30 years old, with dark skin and kind eyes. He wore the uniform of a Marine captain. It is terrifying, Thelnora admitted. Do your people always train like this? Only when we want to be good at our jobs, the captain said with a smile. I am Captain Marcus Cole. I command the 3rd Assault Battalion. Those are my Marines down there. They seem very skilled. They are the best humanity has to offer. There was pride in Cole's voice. Every one of them volunteered to be here. Every one of them knows they might not go home. And every one of them would do this mission, even if they knew for certain they would die. That is what makes them Marines. Thelnora watched as one of the Marines made a mistake, moving too slowly around a corner. The training weapon hit him, marking him as a casualty. The Marine swore loudly, and his teammates laughed at him even as they continued the exercise. They are laughing, Thelnora said, confused. One of them just died, and they are laughing. He is not really dead, Cole said. But yes, they laugh. Humans laugh in the face of death. It is how we cope. How we stay sane when we do insane things. If we did not laugh, we would only cry, and tears do not win battles. Your people are very strange. Yes, Cole agreed. But we are also very good at war, and right now that is what you need. 3 days later, Captain Cole led a strike team on a mission that Admiral Chen had not cleared with the Council. A Devourer scout ship had been detected on the edge of the system. Chen had ordered it captured. The Council learned about the mission when it was already underway. Thelnora rushed to the human command center, demanding an explanation. Admiral Chen pointed at the tactical display without looking away from it. "Captain Cole is about to board an enemy vessel," Chen said. "If he succeeds, we learn how they work. If he fails, we learn how they fight. Either way, we learn. You did not have authorization. I do not need it. You gave me operational authority. This is an operation." On the display, Thelnora could see the human assault ship approaching the Devourer scout. It was small compared to the alien vessel, but it moved with purpose. As she watched, the assault ship locked onto the Devourer's hull and began cutting through. "They are going inside," Thelnora whispered. "They are actually going inside." "Of course they are," Chen said. "How else would they capture it?" For the next 2 hours, Thelnora stood in the command center and watched humans fight machines in the corridors of an alien ship. She saw them die. The Devourer defenses were brutal, and the Marines paid for every meter they advanced. But they did not stop. They did not retreat. They pushed forward room by room, deck by deck. Captain Cole's voice came over the radio, calm despite the sounds of battle around him. "Command, this is Strike 1. We have reached the central processor. Setting charges now." "Negative, Strike 1, Admiral Chen replied. "Mission parameters have changed. We need that processor intact." There was a pause. Then Cole's voice came back, and now Thelnora could hear the strain in it. "Understood, Command. We will hold position and attempt extraction." The battle intensified. More Marines died defending the processor room, while engineers worked to disconnect it from the Devourer systems. It took 30 minutes. 30 minutes of humans fighting and dying to protect a piece of alien technology. Finally, Cole's voice returned. "Command, we have the package." Returning to extraction point, the assault ship detached from the Devourer hull and accelerated away just as the alien vessel began to explode. Secondary blasts chained through its structure, tearing it apart. The human ship escaped, but barely. When Captain Cole and his surviving Marines returned to Nexus Prime, Thelnora was there to meet them. They looked exhausted, covered in burns and wounds. But they were smiling, laughing, celebrating their victory even as medics rushed to treat their injuries. Cole saw Thelnora watching and walked over to her. "We got it," he said, holding up a container. "The processor core. Your scientists can study it now." 14 of your people died, Thelnora said. 14 lives for that. 14 lives to save millions, Cole corrected. "That is a trade any Marine would make. That is a trade we are honored to make." Thelnora looked at the humans around her. They were bandaging wounds, helping injured comrades, and somehow still finding reasons to laugh. They had just fought a battle that would have destroyed most species' will to fight, and they were already asking when the next mission would be. Admiral Chen had been right. These humans were very good at war, and Thelnora was very glad they were on her side. The evacuation of Helios Minor took 3 days. 8 million people moved from their homes to transport ships and sent to temporary shelters on neighboring worlds. The official story was a massive systems failure in the colony's environmental controls. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Thelnora stood in the command center aboard the Indomitable, watching the last transport ship leave Helios Minor's orbit. The colony below looked normal from space. Light still glowed in the cities. Automated systems continued their regular operations. To any observer, it would appear that life continued as usual. But the colony was empty, just a shell waiting to be bait in a trap. "The last civilian transport has cleared the system," reported Lieutenant Park, one of Admiral Chen's staff officers. "All personnel accounted for." "Good," Chen said. She stood at the center of the command deck, surrounded by holographic displays showing every ship in the fleet. "All vessels move to assigned positions. Maintain communication silence. If anything emits so much as a radio whisper, I will personally space whoever is responsible." Around the system, 47 human warships began to move. They did not flee. Instead, they scattered, hiding themselves in asteroid fields behind moons inside the rings of the system's gas giant. Advanced stealth systems engaged, making the ships almost invisible to sensors. The human fleet was not running away. It was lying in wait. Thelnora had been invited to observe from the Indomitable. Most of the council had protested the plan, calling it barbaric, but they had no alternative to offer. So they had agreed, reluctantly, to let the humans try their strategy. Now, as the hours passed and the Devourers approached, Thelnora wondered if the council had made a terrible mistake. Contact, the sensor officer announced. Multiple slipspace signatures. The Devourers are here. On the main display, red icons began to appear at the edge of the system. 1, 5, 10, 20, 30. The enemy fleet was massive, larger than anything the humans had faced before. 30 vessels, Chen said calmly, larger than expected but within acceptable parameters. All ships' weapons hold. Let them commit. The Devourer fleet moved toward Helios Minor with mechanical precision. They did not scout ahead. They did not send probes. They simply approached the colony in a straight line, confident in their superiority. Thelnora watched the alien ships on the display. They were ugly things, all sharp angles and exposed machinery. They looked more like factories than warships, which in a way they were. The Devourers did not fight battles. They simply consumed everything in their path. They are beginning harvest operations, the sensor officer reported, landing craft deploying to the surface. On the display, Thelnora could see smaller craft descending toward the empty cities below. The Devourers would find no one there, but they would not realize that immediately. They would land, begin their harvesting process, and waste precious time before discovering the truth. All ships stand by, Chen ordered. Wait for it. Wait for it. The minutes crawled past. More Devourer craft landed on Helios Minor. The main fleet settled into orbit, positioning themselves to support the harvest. They were exposed now, spread out, focused on the planet below. Admiral, Captain Cole's voice came over the radio. He was leading a strike team aboard one of the hidden assault ships. We are in position. Hold, Chen replied. She watched the display with eyes that never blinked. Not yet, Thelnora wanted to scream. The enemy was right there. Why were they waiting? Then she saw it. The Devourer flagship, larger than all the others, moved into the center of the formation. It was positioning itself in orbit right in the heart of its own fleet. Now, Admiral Chen said quietly, all ships, execute. The system exploded into chaos. Mines that had been seeded throughout the orbital space activated first, detonating in a pattern that had been carefully calculated. Devourer ships rocked from the blasts, shields flaring as they tried to compensate for the sudden attack. Before they could recover, the human fleet struck. Ships emerged from hiding places all over the system, weapons already firing. The Indomitable led the charge, its massive guns tearing into the nearest Devourer vessel. Explosions rippled across the enemy hull as armor failed and internal systems detonated. Fighter craft poured from the human carriers, tiny ships moving at impossible speeds. They swarmed the Devourer fleet like angry insects, targeting weapon systems and engines. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of fire behind them. On the surface of Helios Minor, hidden defense platforms rose from underground bunkers and opened fire on the Devourer landing craft. The empty colony had become a weapons platform, every building concealing guns that now revealed themselves. Contact with enemy flagship, reported the weapons officer. Range 12,000 kilometers and closing. Main batteries fire at will, Chen ordered. All power to forward shields. The Indomitable shuddered as its main guns fired. Beams of concentrated energy struck the Devourer flagship, burning through its armor. The enemy vessel returned fire, and Thelnora grabbed a railing as the deck shook under her feet. Shields holding at 70%, someone reported. Hull temperature rising in sections 12 through 18. Adjust angle, give them a different target, Chen said. Weapons keep firing. Thelnora watched in horror and fascination as two titans exchanged blows. The Indomitable was powerful, but the Devourer flagship was larger. Each hit from the enemy shook the entire ship. Alarms wailed. Damage reports flooded in. People were dying somewhere below, crushed or burned as sections of the ship took critical damage. But the human crew never stopped working. Officers called out orders. Technicians rerouted power. Damage control teams rushed to seal breaches. Everyone had a job and everyone did it even as the ship was being torn apart around them. Captain Cole's team has breached the flagship, Lieutenant Park announced. They are inside. On a secondary display, Thelnora could see feeds from the Marines' helmet cameras. They were fighting through the Devourer flagship's corridors, moving toward its core. The enemy interior defenses were brutal. She watched Marines die, saw them cut down by weapons she did not understand. But the humans kept pushing forward. When one fell, another took their place. They moved as a unit, covering each other, never stopping. Captain Cole's voice was constant over the radio, calling out targets, giving orders, keeping his team moving. Central core in sight, Cole reported. His breathing was heavy, but his voice was steady. Setting charges now. Negative, Strike One, Admiral Chen said. We need that flagship disabled, not destroyed. Plant the device and get out. Ma'am, we cannot disable it. The core is too integrated. We can destroy it or we can leave it intact. Those are the only options. Thelnora saw Admiral Chen's jaw tighten. She knew what the Admiral was thinking. A destroyed flagship was worth less intelligence. But a destroyed flagship was also one less enemy ship. Plant the device, Chen ordered. You have 5 minutes to evacuate. Understood, Command. Beginning evacuation. On the display, Thelnora watched the Marines fight their way back through the ship. They moved faster now, abandoning careful tactics for desperate speed. The Devourers seemed to realize what was happening. The interior defenses intensified. More Marines fell, then more. The team that had entered the flagship numbered 20. Now there were 12, 10, 8. Hull breach, Cole reported. He was almost back to the extraction point. The device is armed. 3 minutes to detonation. The assault ship was waiting docked to the flagship's hull. The surviving Marines ran for it, covering each other as they moved. 7 left now, 6. Come on, Admiral Chen whispered. It was the first time Thelnora had heard anything like emotion in the Admiral's voice. Come on. 5 Marines reached the assault ship. 4 were already inside. Captain Cole was last, providing covering fire as his team escaped. Cole, get on that ship now, Chen ordered. Almost there, ma'am, Cole replied. Just need to... The Devourer defenses caught him. Thelnora saw it on the helmet camera. Cole went down, his armor breached, systems failing. Go, he shouted to his team. Get out of here. We are not leaving you, one of the Marines responded. That is an order, go. The assault ship began to detach from the hull. Thelnora could hear the Marines arguing, their voices overlapping, but the ship continued to pull away. Cole had overridden their controls, forcing them to leave him behind. Admiral, Cole's voice was faint now. It has been an honor. The honor was mine, Captain, Chen replied quietly. The assault ship cleared the flagship's hull and accelerated away. Seconds later, the nuclear device detonated. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. The Devourer flagship simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding sphere of light and energy. The detonation caught the nearest enemy ships, tearing them apart. 12 Devourer vessels died in that one blast. The remaining enemy ships began to retreat. For the first time since they had appeared, the Devourers were running away. All ships pursue, Chen ordered. Do not let them escape. I want every single one destroyed. The human fleet chased the fleeing Devourers to the edge of the system, picking them off one by one. By the time the battle ended, 30 enemy ships had been reduced to 18, then 12, then 6. The survivors made the jump to slip space and vanished. The humans had won. In the command center, the crew erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, cried, laughed. They had won an impossible victory. Admiral Chen stood in the center of it all, her face expressionless. Status report, she said, her voice cutting through the celebration. Casualties? The casualty reports came in slowly. 3,047 dead, 5,000 wounded, 12 ships damaged, 3 so badly they would never fight again. The numbers felt abstract to Thelnora until she walked through the medical bay and saw the reality behind them. Humans lay on beds, some missing limbs, others with burns covering half their bodies. Medical staff moved between them with practiced efficiency, treating wounds that would have killed most species, and somehow impossibly many of the wounded were smiling, talking. Some were even joking with each other. How can they be happy? Thelnora asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief medical officer. They are injured. Their friends died. How can they smile? Dr. Kim looked up from the patient she was treating. Her eyes were tired, bloodshot from hours of surgery. Because they won, she said simply. Because their sacrifice meant something. We do not smile because we enjoy pain. We smile because pain with purpose is bearable. That night, the humans held what they called a wake for their dead. Thelnora attended, not sure what to expect. She found the observation deck converted into a gathering space. Hundreds of humans filled the room, drinking something called whiskey and telling stories. They were laughing, crying, sometimes doing both at once. One by one, people stood and shared memories of the fallen. They told funny stories, embarrassing stories, stories of bravery and stupidity. They celebrated the lives that had been lost rather than mourning the deaths. Captain Cole once tried to cook dinner for the entire battalion, a Marine was saying, tears running down his face even as he smiled. He burned water. We still do not know how. The man could plan a military operation that would make Napoleon jealous, but he could not cook rice. The room erupted in laughter. Someone else stood and shared another story about Cole. Then another person spoke about a different fallen comrade. The stories continued for hours. Thelnora realized this was how humans said goodbye. They turned their dead into legends, keeping them alive through memory and laughter. It was strange. It was beautiful. It was the most human thing she had ever witnessed. The next morning, the council convened. The chamber was packed. Every representative was present, along with observers from dozens more species. The topic was simple but carried enormous weight: what to do about humanity. They saved us, Councillor Vresh began, his tone reluctant. That cannot be denied. But at what cost? They brought weapons of mass destruction. They ignored our protocols. They showed us what war truly looks like, and it is terrible. It is also necessary, Thelnora countered. The Devourers are still out there. One battle does not win a war. We need humanity's protection. And what will that protection cost us? Another counselor asked. Our principles. Our way of life. They will change us, Ambassador. They already have. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted humanity expelled immediately, before they could corrupt galactic civilization further. Others wanted them as permanent guardians stationed throughout council space. A few, like Thelnora, simply wanted them as full members of the council. Finally, Admiral Chen was called to address the assembly. She entered the chamber in full uniform, medals gleaming on her chest. She walked to the central podium with the same confidence she had shown on the bridge during battle. Members of the council, she began. You asked for our help, we gave it. Now you must decide what comes next. But before you vote, understand this. Humanity does not want to rule you. We do not want to change you. But we will not pretend to be something we are not. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the human terms. We want full council membership with no restrictions on our military. We want autonomous authority to engage threats without waiting for council approval. We want territory in the Outer Rim to establish forward bases. And one more thing. She paused, looking around at every face in the chamber. Never lie to us again. You did not ask for advisors. You needed soldiers. You wanted someone to do your fighting for you without having to admit that fighting was necessary. Next time, be honest about what you need. The words hung in the air like an accusation, because they were true. If you cannot accept these terms, we will leave, Chen continued. We will return to Earth and close our borders again. But know this, the Devourers will not stop. They will consume your colonies one by one. And when they reach your core worlds, when they come for your children, you will call for us again, but we might not answer. Chen left the podium without waiting for questions. She had said what she needed to say. The vote took most of the day. Representatives argued, negotiated, and eventually compromised. When the final tally was announced, humanity had been accepted as full council members by the narrowest possible margin. Thelnora let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. It was done. Humanity was part of the council. The celebration lasted less than an hour. Admiral Chen, a junior officer, burst into the celebration, his face pale. Sensors have detected a massive slip space emergence. Multiple contacts. It is the Devourers, ma'am. The main fleet. The room fell silent. Chen walked to the nearest display and pulled up the sensor data. Thelnora looked over her shoulder and felt her heart sink. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, more than anyone had imagined existed. The Devourers had not been defeated. They had barely been scratched. How long until they reach council space? Chen asked. 26 hours, ma'am. Chen studied the display for a long moment. Then she turned to face the gathered council representatives. Well, she said, and there might have been the faintest trace of a smile on her face. I suppose it is good that you made us members. We are going to need that autonomous authority we requested. She tapped her communication device. All human vessels, battle stations. Deploy for full defensive operations. Send a priority signal to Earth. Tell them we need reinforcements. Everything they can spare, Admiral, Thelnora said quietly. Can you win? Against that many? Chen looked at the display again at the massive enemy fleet approaching. I do not know, she admitted. But we are going to find out. Because we do not run, we do not surrender, and we do not lose wars. We just decide how much we are willing to pay to win. The human fleet moved into formation, 47 ships preparing to face an enemy force 10 times their size. It was suicide. It was impossible. It was exactly what humans did best. On Earth, the message was received. Across the planet, shipyards roared to life. The Solar Defense Fleet, which had been created 2 centuries ago when humanity was rejected from the Council, began its deployment. Hundreds of ships, thousands of personnel, the full might of humanity, held in reserve for 200 years, was finally going to war. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around her, her crew worked with calm efficiency. They knew the odds. They knew what they were facing. And they were ready anyway. All ships, maintain formation, Chen ordered. Target acquisition on my mark. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. And remember that somewhere behind us, 8 million people are alive because we were willing to stand between them and darkness. She thought of Captain Cole, giving his life to destroy an enemy ship. She thought of the 3,000 others who had died in the battle. She thought of all the humans throughout history who had stood in places like this, facing impossible odds, and decided to fight anyway. Weapons range in 60 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Chen's hand hovered over the firing control. In the distance, the Devourer fleet drew closer. And somewhere beyond them, the Earth fleet was coming as fast as slip space would allow. Humanity had been asked for advisors. They had sent soldiers. Now they were sending everything. All ships, Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying to every human vessel in the system. This is what we were made for. This is why we keep our weapons. This is why we never forgot how to fight, not because we love war, but because we love peace enough to defend it. Fire at will. The battle began, and on Earth, watching through long-range sensors, the people who had been mocked 200 years ago for refusing to give up their capacity for violence, prepared to show the galaxy exactly why apex predators are called apex. They were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Thelnora watched the human ships engage impossible odds and realized something profound. The Council had not just gained a new member. They had not just acquired defenders. They had awakened something that had been sleeping, waiting patiently for the moment when the galaxy would need it. Something that had never stopped being ready. Something that had been preparing for this moment for 2 centuries. The Council had asked for humanity's presence. They had no idea what they had actually summoned.